And audience, thank you for your questions. As you can see, we don't have enough time to deal with any of them, but you can see what's on people's minds up there on the screen. That, by the way, scrolls, so you're seeing the same things a couple of different times there, and we're going to do our best to work with that. And we've got another opportunity here to join the conversation here with the Minty. And so get on board there. While we transition to our next panel, the question is, what is being done to improve water quality? Let me remind you how important it is to be respectful to your fellow attendees and speakers, and this allows all participants to hear everything that's going on. I'd like to welcome a former county commissioner and currently the executive director of the Argus Foundation. Ms. Christine Robinson has joined us. I'd also like to mention, for those of you that are seated in the back, standing in the back of the room, there's plenty of seats up front, and so come on down and get comfortable if you like. You don't have to stand if you don't want to. And then just bouncing off of Steve's comments for a moment, he mentioned if we could go back in time and fully understand the health of the Bay waters years ago, it might help us to understand what we're shooting for. And I would invite everyone to come down to historic Spanish Point and look at our windows to the past, where you can see thousands of years of shellfish production that were harvested with the Native Americans who were living in a sustainable lifestyle, and it's all there right in front of your eyes at historic Spanish Point. So thank you for allowing me that advertisement. Now, it's time for us to move on. We've got another great list of panelists up here. And Frank Alcock, the Associate Professor at New College, is going to be our moderator for this one. And our first speakers from Sarasota County Government, we have Chuck Walter, the Stormwater Division Manager, and we have Lee Hayes Byron, the Director of UF IFAS, Extension and Sustainability. They will be followed by Isaac Brownman, the Director of Longboat Key Public Works, also Jennifer Fairs, Utility Engineer with City of Northport, and then followed by Bill Reeby, Director of Utilities for City of Sarasota, and Kathleen Whedon, who is representing City of Venice as their engineer. We have Randy Smith with Southwest Florida Water Management District, and he is the Natural Systems and Restoration Bureau Chief. And then finally, joining us today, we have Mark Alderson, Executive Director for Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. He's going to talk about their efforts. So let's go ahead and kick off the second section.
Good afternoon, audience. My voice is a little weak today, but my enthusiasm is still high. So we'll try and go through our slides and make it a good show for you today. So we have somebody else running it. Your patience is appreciated. So we thought we'd start off this part of the presentation and talking about what's been done in Sarasota County with regards to water quality, because there are really many factors to water quality. We're really focusing on bays and estuaries and creeks and streams. But our drinking water is very important, our wastewater is very important, stormwater as well. So let's talk a little bit about what all those topics are and what we've done in the last 20 or 30 years to invest in water quality. So we're going to talk about all of these subjects of ecosystem management and water supply. And the groundwater surface water sources that we have in Sarasota County have been a significant investment over the years. We've invested $120 million in developing the Carlton water plant. And that's an important water resource facility that uses desalination of groundwater. There's also been a recent investment of $370 million to expand the surface water reservoir out at the Peace River plant. We look at the wastewater investments we've had over the last few years. We had a lot of issues in Sarasota County with a bunch of small wastewater treatment plants. We had various discharges that were happening out of those systems and were really causing some serious public health issues. Well, we invested $175 million in getting those consolidated. We still have a few of them. We still have about 20 to 30 of those small package plants, but we've bought about 90 of them, and that's been a significant investment. And just recently took the Siesta Key wastewater treatment plant off-site. That was discharging directly out to the Grand Canal out on the island. Mike had talked earlier about a $15 million investment in our infrastructure, but specifically we invest about $8 million a year in making sure that the wastewater system is tight, looking at infiltration into that system so that we can optimize our plant's treatment capacities. Another thing that we do is that we actually have been delegated authority to monitor these private wastewater plants, the ones that we have left. That's a significant asset to the community that we're able to watch over the small plants to make sure that they're staying in compliance and that their discharges are minimized. Septic to sewer project that most everybody that's been in Sarasota has known about for a long time, but it's always good to talk about, where we've invested $120 million in taking about 10,000 septic systems offline in the Philippi Creek system. That's a significant investment over time. The stormwater utility, that's my side of the shop. Steve had talked a little bit about these two major projects that we have, of Donna Bay Restoration Project and the Celery Fields. Since the 90s, we've invested about $500 million into stormwater infrastructure. People always say that we need to worry more about water quality in stormwater, and I agree with them 100%. But we spent a lot of time in this community making sure that we keep the water out of people's living rooms. We've had serious flooding issues in this community that have been mitigated over time, and these major investments have been that have resulted in those benefits. The Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program. Here's another one that's really provided a lot of benefit to the community. Now, we've purchased about 35,000 acres, but it's been in cooperation with other state purchases, so we've got about 115,000 acres that are in preservation. And those were things that the Sarasota community voted for to tax themselves to buy these properties and put them into preservation. We've also got a lot of little coastal restoration projects going on. Alligator Creek down in South Venice is going to see some serious investment, and that's important because it is the headwaters of Lemon Bay. Lemon Bay's got water quality issues, and we are directing resources to try and deal with the upstream watersheds in those areas. We've got one of the most expansive artificial reef programs in the state. We have more artificial reefs created in Sarasota County than our neighboring communities combined. We've invested in Florida-friendly landscaping projects and water quality projects in neighborhoods through our neighborhood environmental stewardship teams. You'll see some of those people out in the hallway after this presentation. I'd encourage you to go out and talk to them about ways that your community, your neighborhood can invest in environmental improvements in your area. We've also developed significant policies on future development. As we looked at some of the questions ahead of time, it was easy to see that, we have a retention requirement for all new development in stormwater, that they are to retain on site up to the 100-year storm event for water quality treatment and attenuation. That's a much higher level of standard than most communities in our area that require it up to the 25-year event. We have a low impact development manual. When people start talking about things like green roofs and pervious pavements, those types of things, we've developed a manual so that developers can use those techniques efficiently and effectively within their design. We have an extensive program of making sure that construction best management practices are used. During the life of a site, any particular site, for about the first 10 years, 80% of the pollution that's coming off of that site is during that first year of construction. So we've got an extensive program of construction management to try and reduce those impacts. Some other of our development practices are wetland protection ordinances, and we do require wetland protections and mitigation strategies. We have a higher level of treatment, design standard, if you will, for septic systems. The state law says that there's to be 2 feet of separation between the infiltrative surface of the septic system drain field, and we require an extra foot. That gives an extra level of safety to our water supply because it's primarily for virus treatment. We've also got rules and requirements around seawall softening. That's also something that's not done statewide, and one of the things that we've done as a policy and procedure within our rules and regulations to try and minimize the impact from development as we go forward. The fertilizer ordinance, saw that one come up a lot too. When is it required, and when can you not fertilize? And we have it kind of coincidental with our hurricane advertising because it's about the same time of year. As we start to see the rainy season come around, we need to all stop using fertilizer. And that is it's about the same as hurricane season from June 1 to September 30th. And at least 50% of that fertilizer being applied should be slow release. We also require a no fertilizer zone within 10 feet of surface water bodies. And this is one of the real tough ones, is the grass clippings issues that we all see, that as lawns get cut and the mower kicks out the clippings out into a waterway or out into the street. That's really the important time to be managing those clippings. There's some talk earlier about the leaf litter, oak leaves and things like that that fall. Those are an issue and something that we need to manage, but the reality is that those green clippings that go out into the streets, that's the stuff that's got all the nitrogen in it. After it turns brown and kind of decants and most of the water comes out of it, the nitrogen is reduced significantly, but the real green stuff, that's what we really need to focus on and try and keep out of our waterways. Here's one of my favorite slides, because when you're in the stormwater business, you always end up with a stick and a bucket on the end of it at some point. And we do go out and take a look at whenever there is an episodic event that we go out and take a look at it, pull a sample. We've got codes, ordinances to go after the bad behaviors that are in our communities. And I really want to bring your attention to the SeeClickFix application that we have that you can have on your phone, so that if you see issues in your community that need attention, whether it's a pollution issue or a pothole, please take a look at the SeeClickFix.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start off with our monitoring program. Sarasota County has one of the most extensive monitoring programs in Florida. Our wastewater system monitors the effluent from the plants as well as the groundwater around the injection wells. The Healthy Beaches program monitors water quality at 16 beach locations for bacteria and immediately investigates any abnormal samples. We're the only county that monitors red tide in the surf zone as a routine practice. And our stormwater system has over 100 active monitoring stations with decades of data, both along the coast and inland. And we also have 4 air quality monitoring stations with daily air quality reporting on our website. Many people don't realize the impact of air pollution on our water quality. It deposits in our waterways and adds to nitrogen levels. So it's important to make that connection between some sustainable transportation projects as well as our water quality. The county's transportation system, our transit system, takes cars off the road every day, with over 2 million trips for residents and tourists over the last year. The new Siesta Key trolley alone had 200,000 trips last year. In addition, infrastructure improvements like the Legacy Trail also help make it easier for people to choose to bike or walk as opposed to driving. Through recent strong support from our voters, the Legacy Trail will be extended, increasing that impact. Finally, shifting to electric transportation is another opportunity to reduce air pollution. And the county has charging stations at its own facilities and also has a rebate program to encourage certain businesses to add charging stations as well. Now, education is key, we hear this a lot, to ensuring awareness and action within our community. County staff across multiple departments work together to educate on fertilizer restrictions, on opportunities for neighborhood associations to make changes in their landscapes, and specific strategies for individuals to make changes in their yards. Our Florida-friendly landscaping program reached over 21,000 people last year. We also educate our youth on water quality issues. Over the last year, all of the county's 8th graders came out to our office to learn specifically about nutrient pollution in our waterways. We also engage students in environmental calendar contests, natural resources education, and science education through 4-H. We reach a lot of local professionals as well. We have taught best practices in landscaping to 2,500 landscape professionals since 2006. We reach professionals and residents through our Master Naturalist, our Master Gardener, and our Water Stewards programs, many of whom are here today. You can learn more about many of these programs at our tables toward the end of the day today, as well as on our website. Another really impactful effort is the county's rain barrel program. Since 2009, over 3,000 rain barrels have been distributed in our community, and those households have learned both about water conservation and about reducing stormwater runoff through their homes. We think it's important to educate people in creative ways on water quality. We have materials specific to individual creeks so that neighbors know more about the waterways that run through their communities. We also partner with the Science Environment Council to reach new audiences at festivals and through posters and videos and online engagement to encourage people to skip fertilizer in the summer, pick up their pet waste, and more. Another critical component of our outreach program is the County Commissioner's legislative program. They identify priorities for state legislative action, and water quality is always high on their list. In fact, this year we were able to secure $1 million for the Donna Bay Restoration Project from state appropriations. The board also prioritized septic projects and red tide programs and funding, and they will be considering their priorities for the 2020 legislative session very soon. Now, many of these county actions you've heard about so far have been ongoing for many years. They've had a significant impact on water quality over those years, but efforts really have ramped up in the last year as a result of this community priority. Our board prioritized an additional $5 million in the coming year's budget for septic to sewer programs to show their commitment to that effort. We've also expedited and enhanced improvements to the Bee Ridge Water Reclamation Facility and the reclaim storage system. And the Donna Bay project you've heard about has really taken off with inclusion in the Restore Act application in April, new funding from the state, and progress on implementation of phases 1 and 2, which are constructing the reservoir and the water diversion and treatment cells. Lastly, county staff were asked to bring forward a comprehensive strategy to address water quality, and that was considered by the board on May 8th. That water quality improvement plan set a goal of reducing nutrients and other pollutants to protect water resources. It aims to restore natural freshwater flows, to increase treatment of wastewater and stormwater, and to establish partnerships to fund the infrastructure improvements that will be needed. The program specifically proposed upgrades to advanced wastewater treatment, increased connections to septic to sewer, and advanced nitrogen treatment for those septic systems, stormwater harvesting, and nutrient management strategies. The board was very receptive to these ideas and asked staff to come back with more details on the specific strategies as well as how we will fund them. I want to thank you. Sarasota County has a long-standing commitment to water quality and many staff who are passionate and work every day to improve our water quality. You can learn more about the projects at our exhibit tables and as well as on our website. So I'm going to pass off to Isaac Brauman to share what they're doing in Longboat Key.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Isaac Brauman. I'm with the town of Longboat Key. I want to share with you today a little bit of what we're doing in the town to address water quality. First of all, I just want to give you a little bit of an education as to the town of Longboat Key. The town is a barrier island. We are a little bit unique. We are located both in Sarasota and Manatee counties. The county line essentially splits the island in half geographically, with 2/3 of our population on the Sarasota County side. The town was incorporated in 1955 and is essentially built out. Our population full-time generally is around 7,000 residents, but can increase to up to 23,000 residents in the season, generally between January and May. And we do have 10.5 miles of Gulf shoreline. And we also have bayside canals and a historic stormwater system associated with that development. The town does carry with its mission and vision a core expectation that reads in part as follows: the town will protect the island's invaluable natural resources through best management practices and coordinated regional solutions for water quality. And that's part of why we're here today. A little bit of the background: the north end of Longboat Key was one of the oldest areas settled on Longboat, settled in 1885, and more developed in the 1950s and 60s. In 2003, the town did engage a village area stormwater and settlement system to capture a lot of those nutrients that would just run off into the bay. The south end of Longboat Key was a planned unit development developed in the 1970s and 80s by Arvida, and it has many interconnected ponds and systems that run throughout before outfalling to the bay. The town does have a municipal wastewater collection system. It's a small system for a small town. We have 47 lift stations. We have one master lift station. And that lift station is very important to us because it's our single lift station that pumps Longboat Key effluent actually to Manatee County. Manatee County is our potable water and wastewater provider. So we keep a very careful eye on that lift station. We work very actively to avoid leaks and spills where we can. We have a number of generators and bypass pumps to deal with emergency situations. We have a significant programmatic CIP that we're actually doing a lot of work right now to line and seal the system, particularly on the wastewater side. The town code does have a number of enforceable provisions, some related to the lack of property maintenance, which can include illegal dumping and discharges, erosion, dust, having best management practices installed at construction sites. Also related to, we do have a fertilizer ordinance. We also have water efficient landscape and vegetation clipping language in our town code and ordinances. We are a co-permittee with Sarasota County on their municipal services stormwater system, and we are involved with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System for construction sites in terms of reporting and training and public education. Longboat Key is also a member of the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, so we do endorse projects that accomplish water quality improvements. And one of the encouraging things, I want to just emphasize, or at least state, we know there's a lot we need to do, but I also want to celebrate the successes that have taken place over time as well. One of the things we talked to in one of the recent Sarasota Bay Estuary Program meetings is that the seagrass propagation has actually trended upwards over time because of the things that many of our regional partners have been doing. So this is a success that we celebrate and want to continue in that vein. In addition to some of what the town of Longboat Key is doing, we do have a recent construction improvement project in Mid-Key called Bayfront Park, which does include a low-impact stormwater retention area. We're very proud of that. In addition to this park improvement, which is a very popular park in the town and for both for residents on-site and off-site, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission approached the town to do a pilot project at this park, and they're going to be implementing that later this year. Basically, they're going to be testing a section of oyster bed installation. They're going to leave a portion of the park as mangrove fringe, which we have in place. They're going to add reef wall and another 100-foot section of seawall, and then leave just a native seawall that's been constructed there, and analyze the different habitat and sea life propagation that occurs with each of those treatments over a 2 to 3 year period, and there will be educational plaques installed as part of that. Again, so we are looking forward to that installation later this year. As I mentioned, the town of Longboat Key does have a fertilizer ordinance. It was adopted in 2008. And red tide is a challenge for everybody here on the Southwest Florida coastline. Back in the mid-1990s, in 1995 or in that time frame, there was a very bad outbreak as well, significant one, and there was a former town commissioner and mayor that started a group called Solutions to Avoid Red Tide. It started as more of an educational group. They've gotten more involved in fundraising and working with other agencies to actually install and do things. That organization is still in place today, and then also the Longboat Key also has a revitalization task force that's also involved locally, regionally, and involved with state officials as to how can we help to look for solutions to minimize or avoid some of what you heard earlier, a lot of it having to do with natural processes and others that involve estuarine nutrients. Our staff in Public Works were involved in red tide cleanup. It's not pretty work, but it does help get some of that dead sea life out of the waterways, and that's what we have for you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ferris. I'm with the City of Northport Utilities, and I'm here today to tell you about how the City of Northport is making strides towards water quality preservation. As you can see from this slide, both of our water and wastewater plant have sufficient capacity to take us through the future. We are also in construction right now for a new wastewater plant, and a new water plant will be coming after that. Today I'm going to talk to you briefly about a few areas where the City of Northport is putting forth effort to improve water quality. The topics I'm going to discuss include our wastewater plant, the neighborhood expansion project, reclaimed water, a very interesting research project that we're working on with the Water Environment and Research Foundation, and our fertilizer restrictions. Neighborhood expansion. There are about 45,000 properties right now that are not served by water or wastewater service within the city. Of the 45,000 properties, about 1/3 are occupied and have a septic system. Going forward, that is the potential for over 28,000 septic systems within the city if nothing is done. Well, the City of Northport would like to do something about that. The city would like to expand our central water and wastewater service to residential platted lots. In May, our City Commission gave the go-ahead to prepare an RFP, which is a request for proposal, to select an engineering consultant to go ahead and design the first phase of that. Multiple phases are anticipated as funding is available. Reclaimed water. In regards to the City of Northport and reclaimed water, the city passed an ordinance in 2017 to encourage and educate reclaimed customers on the efficient use of reclaimed water. As you can see, since 2009, we have doubled our customers. You might look at those numbers and think, wow, those are pretty small, but each one of those customers is has multiple end users. Now here's where it gets interesting. Just recently, the city has elected to be involved with the research project with the Water, Environment, and Research Foundation. The goal of the project is to assess the contribution of reclaimed water to the nutrient impairment of surface waters using a marker-based approach tool. In a research project that they had done with the City of Naples, iohexol was found in high enough concentrations in the reclaimed water to be considered a good marker. Iohexol, for those of you who don't know, is a contrast agent used in MRI tests. So the City of Northport is participating in this study with WRF and Stantec to determine what percentage of reclaimed water actually gets into the waterways. Data will be collected on the concentration of the marker, nutrients, and other relevant information. Samples will be taken throughout the city. WRF and Stantec are also performing this with other municipalities. The ultimate goal, however, is to develop a guidance manual to assist reclamation agencies and utilities in determining their fractional nutrient loading from their water reclamation practices. So we'll basically get some concrete information. Fertilizer restrictions. The City of Northport has restrictions on the use of fertilizers. Northport City Commission approved a resolution on October 9th, 2018, and this resolution encourages the voluntary non-use of fertilizer year-round. The city also has a fertilizer ordinance that prohibits the use of nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizer on turf for the period of June 1st to September 30th each year. The City of Northport has more efforts in departments other than mine that are moving towards protecting water quality. Oops. We have stricter stormwater regulations than are required by SwiftMud, and we encourage low-impact development design in our site development projects. The city has also purchased land along the Myakkahatchee Creek to protect the creek by not developing these parcels. There's also continued extensive community outreach regarding fertilizer usage and conservation of water resources. Thank you very much for allowing me to present the information about our great city.
Good afternoon. My name's Bill Reeby. I'm the Utilities Director with the City of Sarasota. On behalf of the city, I'd like to thank you all for being here and also for the opportunity to share just a few things that we do in the city to improve water quality. As with any public agency, the city is comprised of multiple departments, some of which have a role with water quality and the mitigation and prevention of water pollution. These roles include development and enforcement of the standards and rules, the administration, operation, and maintenance of various facilities and programs, the investigation of and implementation of best practices, and public outreach and education. It's a multi-pronged approach comprised of capital projects, regulations, so on and so forth. Some of the projects that we've recently completed over the last year is a living seawall, a baffle box. You can see all the debris that comes out of the stormwater pipes. It's a lot. And then a living shoreline. The city actually implemented advanced waste treatment in 1990, 30 years ago, which was a big deal. The effluent coming out of that plant, as was already discussed previously with the previous panel, the water quality, basically for nitrogen, we meet all of the standards for surface water. So in other words, we don't impair waters. So nitrogen's below 1.65 milligrams per liter, and phosphorus is below 0.49 milligrams per liter. In addition to the wastewater treatment plant, the improvements that's already been made, we also have a pretty aggressive program to deal with our aging infrastructure, namely gravity sewer, infiltration and inflow. So we line and we replace, we do those kinds of things. We do have a master plan that we intend to present to the commission on June 17th, which includes a huge amount of renewal and replacement projects. In addition to capital improvements, of course, we have regulations. The city has numerous regulations that we've passed over the years to address water pollution, illicit discharges, and so on. We also have a very active public outreach program. We have volunteer cleanups every year. You can see some of the debris. You can see the tire that came out of the bay. And it's a very active group. We also engage, proactively with local, state, regional agencies to advance water quality in our area. So where are we going in the future? Basically, we're going to continue on with our MS4 stormwater program. Just so you know, that's kind of a fancy way. So we sweep our streets, we clean storm drainage basins, we monitor for illicit discharges. We do all of those things. We report and monitor all of that kind of stuff as required by that program. We'll continue to enforce regulations and adopt new ones depending on the issue and as applicable. Continue to focus to minimize illicit discharges. Again, we have a very aggressive program which is going to become more aggressive to deal with illicit discharges not only from our wastewater collection system, but other discharges potentially in the city. We also have continue on with our public outreach program, actively engage, participate in all of the local, regional, state organizations, programs to improve water quality. We're going to continue on with the construction of sustainable shoreline elements, namely, the living shoreline, those types of projects. We intend to incorporate design features for the Bobby Jones Golf Course renovation project to improve the water quality in Philippi Creek. Lastly, we intend to incorporate, as part of we have an ongoing transportation master plan. So we intend to incorporate some of the green street concepts as part of that plan. Again, thank you for your time. We do have a booth out in the hallway, so if you have any questions or a little more detail, please stop by and we'll be happy to talk to you. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathleen Whedon. I'm with the City of Venice. I serve as their city engineer and their stormwater utility director. Venice has a unique characteristic that we're a mainland that we had the Intracoastal Waterway cut through. So our primary drainage flow is towards the Gulf of Mexico. Makes it very difficult for us to manage stormwater, flooding, and still protect water quality, but we've been putting a lot of effort into that. Water quality and protecting our healthy beaches is a #1 priority of our City Council, and we've worked through a lot of projects over the past few years. I wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about these 3 outfalls that you see, these types of outfalls we have. These are the direct beach outfalls. We've looked at opportunities to completely block the outfalls and direct it to the Intracoastal, but we're actually going against gravity, so it's really not feasible. So our priority is to do as much water quality treatment prior to discharge. We have our dry retention ponds, which would be on the left, where it basically fills up the pond, the water, the storm when it flows off the island. It allows it to percolate in a very high environment with all the sand, and then overflows if we get extreme rain events. What you find is the first half-inch of runoff is where most of the pollutants are found. So the more you can treat that first flush, we call, of water that comes during a storm event, the better you are and the least impact you have. We do have some pipe systems. You'll see these big white pipes. They are stormwater. There is no sanitary sewer, no other type of outfall besides rainwater. Most of those pipe locations have some type of pre-treatment that's available. And we have 2 channel flows, which are Flamingo Ditch and Deertown Gully, shown on the right. Since we have very limited time, I was just going to highlight a couple projects that we've worked with our partners at Southwest Florida Water Management District. We've had bond issues passed by our voters and have worked together with other agencies, state legislative appropriations, to accomplish a lot of water quality treatment in Venice. As you can see, we have 10 primary outfalls onto the beach. Most of those have either a dry treatment pond prior to discharge, a baffle box, as was described previously, that allows the water to separate out the debris, or have some type of other pre-treatment. We've had 2 really large projects that I'd like to highlight at this time. The first one is the outfall 1 and 2, the CDS boxes that we installed in the swale system that was completed in 2010. And also the relocation of our wastewater treatment plant, which was actually done in 2000 to 2001. So we've been working on this for a long time. Previously, located just south of the Venice Public Fishing Pier, there was our Island Beach wastewater treatment plant. Perfect place for a wastewater treatment plant, right on the beach. So there was a very large project where we redirected all of our wastewater programs off island, back on the other side, I-75, you see it as you drive by Laurel Road exit. And we reclaimed that property, we cleaned it up, we demoed the buildings, and we turned it into a beautiful passive park. The pond that you see there is a reclaimed storage pond that allows reclaimed water to be used to water our municipal golf course, which is also located down on that end of the island. This was a great example of the taxpayers making it a priority, the public making it a priority to really enhance an area and improve our beautiful beaches that we have. A second project that was accomplished in the last few years was the outfall 1 and 2 upgrades. We were having some water quality issues at the beach. I'm sure you're aware of times when we've had to close the beach due to high bacteria. Normally that can be from a multitude of causes. I won't go into that in detail. But what we did to minimize those impacts is we have a pumping system. So when the water comes down the beach, or down Granada Avenue and around that area, it goes into a pumping system. That water is then pumped up through an underground infiltration system that runs parallel to the beach near where the Esplanade is the dirt portion of the road, and then it outfalls into the swale system. Outfall number 2 has a baffle box, which is the next one to the south. It also overflows into this treatment system. The majority of the water percolates through the sand, which protects the beach and protects it from additional discharges. During a very high event, of course, we have biflows because you can't treat all of that water, nor is it necessary once you get past that first flush of rainfall. Oh my goodness, we've got these one at a time. We're going to be here a while. Let me get a page on. There we go. Stormwater quality goals, we have the same goals as most of our neighbors. We work together. We also participate with the NPDES program through MS4 with Sarasota County and all of the cities and Town of Longboat Key. We're working with Sarasota County and our own septic tanks, conversions. The city has 45, I believe at last count, that we have managed out of 17,000 customers that we have within the city. We're doing our land development code update to improve our stormwater best management practices and our green infrastructure code. We're going to continue requiring water quality treatment on all new development and continue proper maintenance of existing stormwater systems, public and private. One of the things you find is during the dry season, a lot of the bacteria replication we were seeing was because it gets in this nice, warm, dark environment and there's no rainfall for many, many months, allows the bacteria to replicate and grow. And so we periodically, on a quarterly basis, we pump out, or if we have an extended dry season, we go and pump out all of our collection boxes, and that allows us to minimize some of those bacteria growths. And as I said before, please clean up after your dogs. We find that pet waste is a large bacteria and nutrient contributor. Proper fertilization and pesticide use is also very important. And a lot of these are repeats you've seen earlier today. If you see an illicit discharge or you see someone dumping or you see there's an issue, we also participate in See Click Fix. Please let us know. We'll be happy to send someone out there to provide some additional notification. We also do marking of all our inlets. We have a program. We've had a lot of volunteers, Hands Across the Water. A lot of the other folks have volunteered to mark all the inlets, letting people know that what they put down the drain goes to the bay and to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's very important. And with that, thank you for your time and attention. Please come see our beautiful city. And I will hand over to Randy Smith from the Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Smith. I'm the Natural Systems and Restoration Bureau Chief of the Southwest Florida Water Management District. And I thought I'd start off giving you a little bit of information on the Water Management District. Some of you might not be aware. We're one of 5 water management districts in the state. We were established in 1961 primarily as a flood control district. Since that time, our areas of responsibility have expanded to include natural systems restoration, water supply, and water quality. Integration of all of these areas is essential to the effective planning and management of our water resources. We have a 13-member governing board appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, who establishes our policies and sets our budget. The district is divided into 4 planning regions: the Northern Planning Region, the Tampa Bay Planning Region, the Heartland Region, and here in the Southern Region. We cover all a part of 16 counties, 10,000 square miles from Levy County to Charlotte County, from the Gulf of Mexico to the west to Polk County and Highlands to the east. We have 98 local governments within our jurisdiction, 5.3 million residents, 13 major rivers, 1,800 lakes, 1.1 million acres of wetlands, 3 major estuaries, and 5 first magnitude spring systems. And our mission statement is to protect water resources, minimize flood risk, and ensure the public's water needs are met. To ensure that we use our time and funding appropriately, we've developed a strategic plan that has a 5-year planning horizon. And within that strategic plan, there are 11 strategic initiatives, 2 of which address water quality, assessment and planning with the goal of collect and analyze data to determine local and regional water quality status and trends, and to support resource management decisions and restoration initiatives. The second strategic initiative that addresses water quality is maintenance and improvement, to develop and implement programs, projects, and regulations to maintain and improve water quality. In addition to the 11 strategic initiatives, there are 2 regional priorities per regional planning region. And the Southern region priority that addresses water quality is to improve Charlotte Harbor, Sarasota Bay, Shell, Prairie, and Joshua Creeks. Now I'd like to go through the different activities that the district performs that address water quality. Regulation is one of them. The district issues environmental resource permits that meet the conditions of issuance based on the Florida Administrative Code. This is your stormwater regulations. And just real quickly, a couple of things. You know, if your project site is going to discharge to an outstanding Florida water, it requires additional treatment. If it's going to discharge to impaired waters, it's going to require net improvement. Water quality leaving that site has to be better than it was prior to that for the parameters. that are causing the impairment. There's also compliance. During construction, the district makes sure that proper erosion and sediment controls are in place to prevent sedimentation leaving the construction site. And once constructed, the district ensures that those sites are inspected, 2 to 5 years to make sure that the site is functioning as it was permitted to do. And our regulatory department continues to look for innovative designs such as low-impact development, pervious pavement, new technologies to address our stormwater issues. Land acquisition and conservation. The district owns 450,000 acres within our district boundaries. This includes easements and land that's jointly owned. Within Manatee and Sarasota County, we own over 67,000 acres and invested $124 million into land acquisition. Land acquisition is important. It maintains natural buffers around our lakes, rivers, wetlands, and estuaries, and it preserves these areas and also provides opportunities for restoration. Not all of these sites are in their native condition, so it provides us opportunities where we can restore wetlands and improve water quality leaving these sites. It also provides storage for flood detention and floodwaters, and reducing runoff and allowing groundwater recharge to occur. An additional benefit is the recreation you guys get to enjoy on these sites. Data collection and analysis. This is kind of the foundation for water quality. You need to have the data. You need to know where you stand. You need to know what the status is. You need to know what the trends are over time. The district has 893 active water quality stations within the district. We collect over 2,600 samples annually. We have a NELAC certified lab to ensure and analyze our own samples to ensure that the data is of the highest quality. And we contribute $1.7 million in our budget annually for data collection and analysis. This data also supports the development of water management priorities, plans, and assists in measuring the success of the projects that we implement. And probably the largest single allocation of district funding is to projects. And there are two pathways for projects. We have the Cooperative Funding Initiative. This is a cost-share program where the district will fund up to 50% of projects. Annually, local governments submit applications to the district. Staff take in those applications, evaluate and rank them, and present them to our governing board for funding. There's district initiatives. These are projects that the district takes on and does themselves. I have a few examples of projects that we've funded locally, and since 2002, the district has funded 82 water quality projects within Manatee and Sarasota County, investing $52 million of district funds, leveraged with cooperator funds for an investment of $100 million. We're a strong supporter of the National Estuary Program. We've contributed funding since 1990, currently $133,000 annually. We provide technical assistance, and we're a voting member on the Management Committee and Policy Committee. And future, real quickly, we want to continue to partner with our local governments to identify projects for cooperative funding. We want to explore and support emerging technologies. We're going to update the Sarasota Bay Swim Plan and continue to support the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. And we're going to collaborate with stakeholders. We all have a part in protecting this, the local governments, the water management districts, the state agencies, and the community. And together, we're all going to have to work on this to solve these issues going forward. And lessons learned, most importantly. We need to look back on what we've done the last 20 years. We need to look at what has been successful, what hasn't been successful, build on those successes, and have a continuous improvement project to meet the challenges going forward. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, a lot's been done to restore and protect our waters along this coast. But what I'm about to present today is some data suggesting that we haven't done enough and we need to do more. As Mike presented a little while ago, the counties are currently at secondary treatment levels for their wastewater. Others aren't. In our region, they've gone higher than that. And it's going to be a very difficult decision for this community to make, because it's a lot of money. So with that in mind, let me start off by saying that our program is involved in just about everything you've heard here today. I commend the speakers for everything they've said about what we're trying to do to preserve and protect our environment. We're basically in three major components: habitat restoration, which is involved in nutrient uptake. It's one thing to reduce the loads to the system, but you also need the living resources within that system to uptake the nutrients to help keep them out of the water column and reduce your algal productivity. We're involved in water quality enhancement projects around the region. We helped set the policy for this area that suggests that we need to go to advanced waste treatment standards. Next, we're involved in public stewardship, and we have a major outreach program through our outreach effort through our program to engage with the public to try to get them to understand the importance of nutrient removal in our community. We're involved in wetlands, oyster reefs, artificial reefs, and what's not shown in this seagrass is seagrass, because all of these are very valuable components to our ecological systems throughout not only Sarasota County, but our region. And we're very much encouraging more projects throughout our area. When I drove up here today, I looked at the wetland treatment system just on the pond outside of Riverview High School that we were involved in constructing here on campus with the students. We have major events throughout the region through our volunteer events, planting plants, again, for nutrient uptake. Our Bay Partner grants to community organizations throughout the region also encourage nutrient removal and nutrient uptake. And then our educational programs with our school kids throughout the region, again, a major emphasis on nitrogen and the impacts of nitrogen and the impacts nitrogen can have on our systems overall. We also developed water quality standards for our region that were adopted in federal law, and they are to protect our bays and also finger point areas and problem areas that might be arising as a result of the need for more management. As has been mentioned here on several occasions, nitrogen and the effects of nitrogen on our systems. And they basically impact seagrasses the most. And seagrasses are the canary in the coal mine with regard to our ecological systems throughout this area. And what happens is you increase seagrasses where these fish are on this diagram, you reach a tipping point. And when you reach that tipping point and you put too much nitrogen in the system, you begin to see declines. And when you see those declines, that's when you need to react. Because if you wait too long, like they have in Indian River Lagoon, you have nothing left. So I'm encouraging all of us to think about where we are in this paradigm, and we need to think about where we're going to go into the future so we just don't have a phytoplankton environment, as Cindy Heil was suggesting up here, because that's the environment that's most conducive to all types of algal productivity in our systems. A lot of good things have happened, as has been talked about here today. A lot of effort has been made across this region, including Sarasota County, to improve the quality of the water in our areas. And you can see by this diagram, up until 2016, we had progressively improving water quality better than we had in 1950. So not as all bad here. But we've been really concerned about what has been going on recently in the last 2 years. And we've lost about 4.6%, of our seagrasses in Sarasota Bay, and we started to look at where those losses have occurred to try to pinpoint problems in our particular area. And two areas of concern here in the Sarasota Bay watershed are Little Sarasota Bay and Blackburn Bay, where we've had losses of seagrasses, and we need to take a closer look at these systems to figure out what's going on. The same types of losses have been reported down in Lemon Bay, which is also of concern to our region. As a result of our early investigations of this, we've seen increasing nitrogen levels in the Sarasota Bay, in Sarasota County waters. And so we need to figure out how to turn this line around and start going back down the other way. We've also been looking at the water quality standards in reference to chlorophyll levels to see if we're attaining those standards. And this is just a shot of Blackburn Bay, which shows that we do have some areas of concern. We are forming a water quality consortium regionally to look at this entire issue, containing regional experts, and we're going to be recommending pathways for helping meet those water quality standards across the region. We're also looking at Tidal Creek standards throughout the area. We've also involved in updating our comprehensive conservation and management plan, and you can see one of these action plans is water quality and quantity, and we'll be revising that plan in 2021, which we hope will be incorporated into our overall restoration efforts. I encourage you all to go out to the Seagrass Survey Festival. It's going to be happening on June 15th, and just come out and enjoy the bay and all the volunteers that have come out to look at our seagrasses. We're doing another effort in June up in Manatee County building oyster reefs, and that's my presentation today.
Once again, I'd like to introduce Dr. Frank Alcock from New College, who's going to be the moderator for this. Those controlling the Menti, maybe we run a little slower, and Dr. Frank, I'd encourage you to try to pick out some of the tougher questions that appear up there. Don't take the easy ones.
All righty. I first want to just start by commending the panel for staying on time. We have a very large panel here today, and to a person, they were hitting it on the minute. We have about 25 minutes left, and my instructions are to split that time. The first half of that time will be devoted to my best efforts to consolidate many of the questions that came in prior to this summit, and then the second half we're going to switch over to the Menti questions. Now, just moderator's prerogative, we do have a lot of people here on the panel. What I'd like to do is most of the questions as they came in really relate first and foremost to a county-wide perspective. And so I think I'm going to ask for Mike or Chuck or even Lee on these questions to a first answer, and then I will go to municipality perspectives, and if you just give me a little high sign rather than going through all 8, I'll let anybody in, and then Randy, again, some of them more or less might pertain to the Water Management District, other ones not so much, and so we'll see how far we can get with that. Okay, without any further ado, let's go to wastewater. We had a lot of questions that came in that were directed. Wastewater generally, but there's a lot of buzz around this notion of advanced wastewater treatment. We've heard that our existing conventional treatment would bring down nitrogen levels to still in many cases it's double digits, so it's 10 milligrams per liter or more. AWT would take that down to 3 milligrams per liter. The city does it, Tampa, Hillsborough County does it, we don't do it. And so what I'd like to do, and this has been covered I think in some of your talks, but just come back for clarity, what does that mean? How much is it going to cost to do that in Sarasota County? What does it mean? How much of a difference does it make to be at 3 milligrams per liter versus 10 milligrams per liter? And beyond the price tag, I imagine it's not cheap, what other constraints are there out there that we should be thinking about as the county moves to consider where it's going to go over the next couple of decades? So, Mike. Yeah.
All right. The county has been looking at advanced wastewater treatment for a while. There are several challenges that the county is facing. We have 3 regional wastewater treatment plants for Sarasota County that serve over 90,000 customers in Sarasota. Our largest facility is our Bee Ridge wastewater treatment facility. It's currently about it's permitted as a 12 million gallon a day facility. We anticipate that facility will eventually be about an 18 million gallon a day facility. That facility sits on a parcel that has adequate space to conceivably convert that facility to an advanced waste treatment facility. We're evaluating that at this point. Some of our other facilities, our Central County facility and our Venice Gardens facility, they sit on much smaller parcels, and it's a much larger challenge to convert those processes to advanced waste treatment. We're exploring all options. Nothing is off the table at this point in time, but we have a larger challenge in those areas. As far as getting it down to the science, I'll leave that to the scientists and Chuck on the nitrogen, but we produce out of the Bee Ridge facility, like you said, in the double digits. By the time it gets into the reclaim system and out to you, it's in the lower double digits that that you're receiving out on your irrigated lawn as part of the reclaimed water system. Go ahead.
And from there, let's talk a little bit about priorities as we go forward and think about how we're going to be treating our wastewater in our community. As we talked about a little bit, that the focus of trying to get the septic systems offline and into the system from the Philippi Creek program, from trying to get the small package plants offline and into the major systems. So as we go forward and think about those costs of getting the plant up to AWT standards, we do want to remember that everything is a trade-off. So if we focus all of our resources on getting to AWT, are we missing the low-hanging fruit of maybe expanding some of our septic to sewer program, because those septic systems have a large impact as well. So it is really a balancing act going forward as we look at the alternatives to really try to get the best return on investment and the greatest amount of nitrogen removal for the lowest investment.
Mark, again, I had skipped over you, but as the custodian of our Bay Estuary program, you've been around here for a while, just a reaction to that question.
Well, you're reducing your nitrogen contribution across the region by 5-fold, 10-fold, depending on your concentration in your fluid. So if you're going from 18 milligrams per liter down to 1 or 2 milligrams per liter, you're getting quite a reduction in your concentration that's being then spread across the region as reused water. So you're getting a pretty good load reduction by going that way, if that makes sense.
Yes. Anybody from the municipalities want to hop in on that? Or okay, I'm actually going to flip to a third question that I sort of gave you in advance, just because it's related, and then we'll come back to the development question. But and Chuck, you had mentioned tree. Sorry. Does anybody, other than an uncertainty bar that's significant and a lot of money, does anybody want to, how much is it going to cost?
That's a loaded question right now. We have generalized estimates. We're working on specific estimates as we speak, but generalized estimates are anywhere between $50 to $100 million.
Is that per plant, or is that total?
That's only at the Bee Ridge plant.
Okay, that's a big price tag. Chuck, you had mentioned the potential for trade-offs and the importance of upgrading septic to sewer, maybe not throughout the county, but doing a lot more than we have to date, even though that we've done a lot. We're seeing very big price tags. And so a lot of the questions that came in asked about how would we pay for these necessary upgrades, wastewater, septic, other infrastructure projects to make to get us to the level of an ideal water quality condition. Any thoughts that you might have on how do we finance this? What are our options? To what extent would we be able to leverage investment contributions from other partners? So I'll start with Chuck on that.
Thanks, Frank. When we created the water quality improvement plan, we really looked at the three primary sources of nitrogen in our community, which are stormwater, septic systems, and wastewater treatment systems. And of those three sources, we could tackle each one of them somewhat separately and also cooperatively, because as Steve Swad talked about earlier, the stormwater system conveys everyone's load, as it were, out to the bay. So to the extent that we can treat it at the source, to the extent we can treat it within the conveyance network, really becomes a financial management and an engineering solution. The price tag as we sit today is about $310 million. And when we look at that kind of investment and spread it out over 20, 25 years, because you're not going to do it all at once, that we're looking at an annual revenue need of about $30 to $35 million. Now, one of the most important things when you start throwing around numbers with that many zeros behind them is that it's a real important target to start putting out there. We've got some of our great local elected officials here today and our other partners with the Water Management District, that the most important thing about putting those kinds of numbers out there is that you've at least got a target identified, and now we can start looking for partnerships, whether it's with the Water Management District and looking at their goals and missions and how they can align with ours. The EPA is also a great source of funding, as well as line item appropriations through the state legislature and possibly even federal money. So we've done the first few steps of identifying how big is this animal, and it's our intent to basically start going back out to the major citizen advisory committees that we have over water issues, which are primarily the Stormwater Environmental Utility Advisory Committee. We also have an advisory committee for the Water and Sewer Department. We have the Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program, and we're also going to reach out to the library group as kind of a little bit of somebody that doesn't have as much skin in the game as these other advisory committees, and start putting these issues and dollar amounts before them so that we can start to talk about, well, how would Sarasota County start to generate our share of those funds going forward? Because the best way to get in line to get these external funds is to say, we've got some skin in the game. We're going to have to go to the table with some of our own local money. And again, where's that going to come from? General fund? Is it going to come out of utility fees that we already have, whether they're stormwater utility fees, whether they're wastewater or water utility fees? There's a number of places that they could all come from, and that trying to make some determination on what is equitable, how does it get distributed throughout the entire community, will be one of the issues that we're discussing, and try to get some clarity from our advisory committees, and then we're bringing some of those options back to the board in September.
Okay, I'm going to, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to switch over to the next area where we had the most questions come in. We're in the area of new development. And there are concerns about the impacts of development, what many perceive to be overdevelopment and patterns that might continue looking out to 2050. Land clearing, wetland impacts, more impervious surfaces on runoff, concerns about stormwater. What I'd like to do is just try to fold that stuff into just a general question about the implications of development projections for water quality county-wide and then maybe within your municipalities. I know you're not making major development decisions here, but a lot of people on the panel do have some say in terms of permitting, or at least can speak to permitting processes and the distinction between old development, new development. So let me, again, maybe start with some of the municipalities on this one. React to the implications of, development for water quality.
Sure, I can start for Longboat Key.
Kathleen? You're looking frightened, so I thought
I didn't have a microphone, so I was hoping that would save me. Well, the City of Venice, along with all of our other partners, work cooperatively with Southwest Florida Water Management District. So we do require and we verify that they get their Southwest Florida Water Management District permits. We're updating our LDRs at this point, our land development regulations, to increase water quality requirements. And then impact fees are a cooperative venture through with Sarasota County as far as moving forward with new development.
On the town of Longboat Key, as I mentioned earlier, we're essentially built out. So a lot of our development is actually redevelopment. So it presents an excellent opportunity as the new construction occurs to bring them up to the current standard, whether it's a single family lot that provides infiltration trenches and some sort of a retention even on that site, to any kind of new major developments such as where the old colony was, which is going to be proposing and developing a rather elaborate stormwater quantity and quality system. So in the case of Longboat Key, we're seeing a lot of the older development as they turn over and get redeveloped. We see those opportunities to improve water quality and quantity situations.
Go ahead, Bill.
City of Sarasota, but that the city of Sarasota we're pretty much built out as well, just like town along, just similar here. So it's this, we basically do the same types of strategies, redevelopment. So all of those things in our toolbox there as well.
Jennifer?
At the City of Northport, we implement, like I said in my presentation, the low-impact development designs, cisterns, and the like, pretty much similar to the sister cities here.
And Randy, I wouldn't mind you answering this.
Yeah, development definitely, has some challenges going forward. Not much different than development has created challenges to this point. And I think we'll have to look to technology, best management practices, land conservation and land acquisition has been a big part of that. And those are challenges that we're going to have to face in the future.
Okay, while I'm on follow-up, actually not a follow-up, but a new question, Randy, one that came through that's, I think, more direct, concerned over the lower flow rates in our springs. What is the water management district doing to address that?
Well, the district sets minimum flows and levels. We're in the process of doing that on a couple of systems right now in reevaluation of those. Minimum flows and levels is another regulatory step to prevent significant harm in these systems. Spring flows, especially, in our northern region where we have our 5 first magnitude springs, water withdrawal is really a small percentage of the flow reductions in those regions. The vast majority of the changes in flow is based on rainfall in these spring systems. So there are a number of steps, obviously as we go forward and development comes in and there's additional groundwater supply needs. Minimum flows provides, a regulatory step that which we will not issue groundwater withdrawal permits if flow trips those minimum flows. And that's where alternative water supply and reclaimed water and these other, alternative water supplies are going to be really important going forward because we are starting to reach in certain areas, some of the limits that where groundwater is going to supply our water supply going forward.
Chuck.
Talking about springs in Sarasota County is always one of my favorite subjects, actually, because we have a very unique geology in Sarasota in that we really don't have springs. We have a couple of them down south, down near Northport, but those are very unique springs in that the sources of the water are very deep. They're not like the springs that you see up in the northern part of Florida around Manatee Springs and Rainbow Springs. And it's because in Sarasota we have something called the Venice Clay. And the Venice Clay is a very tight geologic unit that's about 60 to 80 feet down, and it's about 80 feet thick of clay, which means that our surficial aquifer, what goes into the groundwater system, basically stays at the surface and does not really go down deep into the Floridan aquifer like it does in most of the rest of Florida. So we do have a unique geology in Sarasota in that scenario.
Thank you, Chuck. One of the questions I'm going to pull off of Menti, it's a follow-up. You might have commented on it. I've seen you comment on it before, Mark, and it has to do with the variance in the loss of seagrass. So the specific question was, why was so much seagrass lost around Blackburn Point, Little Sarasota Bay? But maybe you can speak to why do you think you're seeing that variance across the watershed?
We don't know the answer to that question at the present time. We've had one meeting on this with Sarasota County staff. They're going to be updating their pollutant loading model for the region, and we ought to be able to tease out where the loadings are coming from as a result of that effort within the county.
Chuck.
The seagrass declines that we've seen are based on a 2-year rolling survey that's done by the Water Management District, and we're very appreciative of that effort. The Stormwater Department also does some very detailed seagrass mapping within the bay, and we are going to be basically to look at the specific areas that we've seen the declines, because in some of those areas we've seen that it's been decline in species and decline in health of the grasses. So we're going to be doing much more detailed surveys of those areas where we've seen declines and along the fringes to see where the healthy and the impacted systems to hopefully help identify the cause and effect, because it could be a result of a particularly wet year, it was particularly cold winter, and those 2-year surveys don't give us quite the level of detail that will hopefully get us to the answer, but I think we've got a monitoring program laid out that'll help us get the answers.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to go to a question from the cards that were submitted. Why are these septic systems on Casey Key and Manasota Key not converted to central treatment and disposal away from the Gulf and estuaries? When can this be expected to happen?
That's part of the discussion that's ongoing currently. As everyone knows, the Philippi Creek Septic System Replacement Program has been ongoing now for better than 15 years right now. So we're winding down that program. There are still some areas that we're working on and we're actively going to finish construction in. But we're also looking at exploring other areas. As Chuck mentioned before, there are approximately 40,000 septic systems still in the county that are impacting the water. We've identified 12,000 roughly within 900 feet of water bodies that are most impactive. So we're exploring new programs right now to begin discussions with the county commission to develop those. As far as a specific time frame, we can't give you a specific time frame right now.
But those are within that water quality improvement plan and that 20-year, 25-year projected horizon. If it were to be implemented, that's within those budgeted dollars that we have allocated.
Right. Okay, Mike, coming back at you again. Short, medium, and long-term plans for reducing the sewage bills.
Reducing sewage bills has always been a priority for the department. As I mentioned earlier, we invest upwards of $15 million a year in fixing and tightening up our aging infrastructure. We also have developed replacement programs. This is an ongoing, continuous process. We're starting another initiative to implement what's called a CMOM program. It's a capacity maintenance, operation, and management of our collection system. It's an EPA required program. We do a lot of the aspects of that are required under that program, but we're trying to formalize that and make it quantitative and an auditable resource so you can see what the county's doing to help reduce those sanitary sewer overflows.
Okay, Randy, I see questions popping up, varying degrees of specificity with respect to Mosaic. I'll just, a general one from the cards. How does SwiftMud monitor Mosaic? They told me not to take the easy one, so.
And they're subject to the same regulations that any other entity is, and Water Management District monitors them through the regulatory process just like anybody else where the Water Management District has that jurisdiction.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. We still have about 4 or 5 minutes. This might take a little bit, maybe not, and I want to come back to the municipalities a little bit. There are lots of questions out there on fertilizer, and most of you actually addressed things that were happening with respect to fertilizer ordinances and fertilizer control. The nature, I think, of a lot of the regulations tend to be voluntary, and the enforcement tends to be, I think, more along the education rather than punitive in terms of educating people that commit infractions. I think the general question that I might sort of pull these, cast or pose to you all, where you are right now in terms of your respective municipalities or county-wide with our fertilizer ordinances and our fertilizer regs, do you view this as a sort of an intermediate step to something that would happen longer term, or do you think, we're kind of where we need to be with fertilizer, just needs to be more education and training? So anybody can answer that question, but Mark, you have your hand up, and then we can come back to the municipalities.
Well, when the fertilizer ordinance came about here locally, I was heavily involved in that development, and I just don't see us moving to further regulation within this county. It was designed to be an education, a major educational program with some bits of regulation behind it. But I just think that right now we're going to be staying there. And also the state legislature is, not in favor of moving forward with additional regulation on fertilizers at this point.
Yes.
And that's consistent with what I was going to say. We're fortunate that Sarasota County, City of Ennis, all the other municipalities, we adopted a fertilizer ordinance before the state legislature prohibition of the local control. So we do have a fertilizer ordinance in place. It is voluntary, but we spend a lot of time, and you're welcome to come by our booth. Catherine Herring is there as well. We do a lot of outreach, and we always look for opportunities of better ways to get the message out. We want to have healthy lawns so that they can, minimize the amount of runoff. We want to fertilize properly and at the right times in order to minimize those impacts to water quality.
Anyone else? Okay. One or two questions came in. Aside from converting from septic to sewer systems, the flavor of some of the questions were, what are we doing to make sure that these septic systems are functioning the way that they're supposed to be? So it's monitoring on existing septic systems. Yeah.
Well, I can say that our city council just adopted through just the city of Venice. If you do have a septic system, as I mentioned, there's very few of them, around 45 of them in the city limits. We are offering free inspection and pump out to make sure that those are in compliance. But we have a much smaller issue with septic than some of the other surrounding communities.
Anybody else on that question? All right, got time for one more. Can we prevent communities from spraying out beneficial plants like tape grass or chara in retention ponds? It's gone. All right, last one. Man, I did so good up until this last minute here. Why exactly is the word spill used when sewage is knowingly released into our waters?
That is an important point to bring up, because there's two different issues that have taken place recently, and they are getting confused. There's been some discharges out of the Bee Ridge plant that are post-treatment. Then there's an actual spill that takes place within the collection system. That's the type of spill that we're really, frankly, the most concerned about, because it has public health implications. That's the stuff that has, close the beach, no swimming type advisory issues associated with them. And that's where stormwater is really trying to work closely with the utilities, because generally speaking, those wastewater spills occur during a major rain event. And to the extent that we can try and keep stormwater out of the wastewater system will be a big help. We've seen a lot of places in the city of Sarasota and in Sarasota County that if somebody's got a little localized flooding problem in their backyard, that they'll go out and open up a clean out in their yard, and they'll drain their yard into the sanitary system and cause an overflow. That happens, and it happens quite often. So there's a lot of things that are going on out in the community that we're trying to get a better handle on, whether it's one of your neighbors opening up a clean out to try and drain their yard, or if we've got flooding in a street that's going into a manhole lid, maybe those are places where we can seal the lid or try and correct the flooding problem. But those are the issues that we're looking at in particular where we can work together as departments.
Okay, we are exactly on time. Nice warm hand for panel number 2.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Chuck, Lee Hayes, Isaac, Jennifer, Bill, Kathleen, Mike, Randy, Mark. Folks, we've got a few things I want to share with you. It's clear that there's a lot of good stuff that's going on, but the next session is going to be awesome because we're going to hear about some other things that are going on that people are doing, real people, and things that you can do.